Welcome to another edition of Our City. A few things going around the city of Elizabeth this week. On August 4th at 6 o'clock in the evening, I will join residents from around our city in celebrating the 32nd annual National Night Out. This event features health, safety and security exhibits, free refreshments, games, demonstrations, citizen awards, raffles, music and more. This year it will take place at the refurbished Veterans Memorial Waterfront Park located on Front Street and Elizabeth Avenue. As many of you know, that park was destroyed during Hurricane Sandy and we reopened it in May of this year, and many of you enjoyed the fireworks that were held there on July 4th. I'll also present a proclamation announcing August as Baseball Month in order to raise awareness of our nation's favorite pastime. And later on August 12th, we're going to do something with a lot of young people. We'll talk about that later in the next week's show. So for more information, please call 820-4238. And if you need any more information on this event or any other events, please call our Public Information Office at 820-4124. And please stay with us after these messages, where I'll be joined by Bill Lavin of Where Angels Play, who also just got done doing a new playground at Veterans Memorial Park. Please stay tuned.
Offering everything you could want from college, including a life. Kean University.
Welcome back to Our City. I'm pleased to be joined by Bill Lavin, who's a retired fire captain here in the city of Elizabeth. And when he retired, he started Where Angels Play. And we're going to hear an awful lot about that organization, which has done great things on the East Coast here in our country. Bill, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Mayor.
So first of all, how long are you retired now?
Just about a year. July 1 was 1 year.
So what are you doing?
Goes fast. Well, I'm busier than ever. We're spending our time building playgrounds and
well, first, you were FMBA president for years. And
yep.
Tell us about your commitment not only to the city fire department, but also the state FMBA.
Sure. I grew up in Elizabeth, as you know, and spent 26 great years on the Elizabeth Fire Department. Many of those years I doubled as the president of the New Jersey State Firefighters Mutual Benevolent Association. So much of that, as you know, was involved in the politics and pensions and benefits and all the things that go with that on the state level. But as as we moved into Hurricane Sandy and trying to advocate for the people there, I saw a different vision and a different way to help people.
So Bill, tell us about that way to help people. You formed a nonprofit organization called Where Angels Play.
Right.
And the impetus for that had to do with a hurricane or a huge ecological disaster in the southern part of our country, but it's grown to so much more.
Yeah, it actually has its roots in 9/11 because we, New Jersey firefighters and Elizabeth as well, responded to the World Trade Center. Actually, I think we spent the night together there, you and Chief Kelly and myself. But as we were navigating that disaster, we received cards and letters from a third grade class from Bay St. Louis, Mississippi, and they were cheering us up because one of our captain's nieces was a teacher there. Fast forward 4 years later, Hurricane Katrina devastates the Gulf Coast, and we were curious as to how those children made out. And I was the president of the FMBA at the time, and we found that that school where they had sent us the letters from had been completely destroyed, and 80% of those children who reached out to us had lost their homes as well. So we decided to raise money. We raised about $400,000, sent it to Save the Children. They asked us to come down and see what they were doing with the money, and 6 months after the storm, it had looked like it had happened yesterday. They were still devastated, and so we decided that along with the kids there, that they needed a playground. The one thing was clear: there was no place for the kids to play. There was still rubble, glass, and debris. So the organization went down with some police officers, mostly firefighters, and built 3 of the first 100% handicap accessible playgrounds in the history of the state of Mississippi. Great rewarding experience. We come back home and get back to our lives and all the things that we do with the firefighters and the labor union. And then 7 years later.
But you also got a lot of thank you letters from those kids.
Oh, yeah.
That you shared with me and others.
Yeah.
Some of those letters were pretty moving.
It's powerful. In fact, we kept relationships with the children and their families. My brother followed one child's career right into high school, and he became a football star. So we knew that we had made an impact there, and we had like a sister city in Bay St. Louis in Mississippi, and a real close relationship there. But we thought, as time went on, that we would lose contact with them. And in 2012, New Jersey, as we all know, experienced their own hurricane through the superstorm Sandy. And once again, I was still the president of the FMBA. We started to help to rebuild. Elizabeth was hard hit with our, many people don't know that a lot of the northern cities were hit as well as the beaches down south. So we started to try to rebuild, and just as we were getting our feet under us again and making some sense of the storm, getting power back, the tragedy of Sandy Hook Elementary School happened, where 20 children and 6 teachers were killed in the shooting there. And all of our efforts stalled. We realized that while we thought we had problems, this was clearly something beyond even our comprehension. My mother used to say, I think I shared this with you once, that if you threw your problems in a pile with everybody else's, you'd fight to get yours back. And this was clearly the lesson there. So I was personally getting very frustrated with state politics and with all that goes along with that. And I just thought that we needed to go into a different direction. So ironically, 3 days after this shooting happened in Connecticut, I received a video email from a little 9-year-old girl. And in it, she says, "Thank you for the playground that you built 7 years ago, but more importantly, for caring so much about us." And they were paying it forward. They were collecting Christmas gifts for the children of the firefighters in New Jersey. And it gave me this idea. In fact, I remember saying this to you at the one of the Christmas gatherings, that I have this crazy idea. And it was to get back to that good feeling of building playgrounds, and not to build 3 this time, but 26, one for each of the children from Sandy Hook, and build them along the coast of New Jersey, New York, and Connecticut in storm-battered areas to lift up those communities. So there's so many miracles that have taken place along the way, and we used to say that we used to believe in angels, and now we know there's angels, because each of the 26 families who will tell you they don't agree on everything and don't agree on much as far as the politics of all the things that have happened surrounding that tragedy. Gun issues, on mental health issues, on the publicity and the exploitation in some cases. They are in very different camps. But the one thing that we're so proud of that they all agreed on was the playgrounds. And I think that was because the playgrounds celebrated who they were, what they liked, their favorite color, their favorite toy, their favorite animal, and their personality shone through, rather than focusing on how they left us. And so we partner with the families. The little brother or sister of the child, or the son or daughter of the teacher, would work right alongside us. We would make them our foreman, and it was just a really beautiful project. And So
you've named the playgrounds that you built after each individual child?
Right. The first 26 that we built, and to be honest with you, we didn't know whether we would build 1 or 5 or 10, but all 26, and each one is named after the little children from Sandy Hook or the teachers that were lost there, and they are built in the color, favorite color, and the personality of the individual that it's named for kind of shines through.
So what was the first one you built there?
The first one was in the eye of the storm in kind of the central focus in New Jersey, was Seabright, hard-hit community. And so Anne Marie Murphy, in March 1st of 2013, we broke ground and completed that the first playground took us about 2 weeks to build, and then as we got more adept at building them, we started to build them in 2 and 3 days.
I know.
So
we're going to get to the one in Elizabeth. It took 48 hours to build the thing.
Yeah.
So, which is absolutely remarkable.
Yep.
So when you say that everybody agreed, the families in Newtown, Connecticut, were extremely supportive. Were they reluctant to get involved in memory? I mean, it had to be hard to bring these families together to say, hey, we're going to name a playground after your 5-year-old son or daughter who was tragically or brutally killed?
Right. Well, one of the blessings of my life has been to meet with each and every one. I think what they respected, there were so many projects and programs and memorials that were built, but few actually consulted with the family and asked them would they be okay with this. So what we did very early on was I met with each and every mom and dad and told them that this isn't something that you have to do, that they would have full control. You know, if they wanted publicity, we would have publicity. If they were okay with the media, if they wanted bagpipes, if they wanted big, you know, pomp and circumstances, and they controlled. You know, that's what they loved about it, that they had full control of that, and we always put the families first. It was one of the most difficult things, as you can imagine, walking into a home or a living room of a mom and dad that has suffered the worst loss imaginable. But they loved and as I said, they loved the idea of their angel looking down and being remembered and watching over the angels that are still with us, and through that, their child would be remembered. Rather than, I mean, memorials are great, and there's the somberness of those types of stones and you know, monuments are very important. The difference with our playground is that when you go there, there's children laughing and playing, and there's a sense of joy, and it's not a somber place. You know, the reason that we built them is tragic, certainly, but the playground is kind of a triumph over tragedy story.
Did the families get involved in building?
Very, very, very hands-on. We had some who were reluctant at first, but we had some who I can remember just grabbing the jackhammer and digging the holes. And one of the really special pieces of this was to watch the parents watch their surviving child interact with us and help us build. And many of them would say, you know, I'm so happy that I was able to build this beautiful playground in honor of my brother and sister. And I would guess that years from now that they would say, you know, they would be, you know, telling that story that the playground in honor of my brother or sister is in such and such a town, and, you know, I helped to build it.
So how did you find the people to do this, Bill? You weren't doing this yourself. And what knowledge did you have of building playgrounds when you started?
Yeah, no, we really knew nothing of it except for our experience in Mississippi. We partnered with the Giordano family, who's out of Kenilworth, and they helped us to build the playgrounds. You know, they actually knew how to build the playgrounds in Mississippi. But we have a the skill set among firefighters and police officers and teachers. You'd be surprised of what they're able to do. So it didn't take long before, especially the core group that was with me in Mississippi, they remembered how rewarding that experience was and couldn't wait to get started. And towards the middle and end of our project, which really it's not ended.
There is no end, is there?
There might not be an end. I hope not. But as we started to build these things, my challenge was not to get volunteers, but actually to find enough work for the hundreds of volunteers that would show up. Because we say they're like potato chips. You can't just show up at one.
So people came back for more than one?
No, each person that spent any time at all and met the families and saw that the reaction and what it meant to the families came back time and time again. In fact, we had guys who would schedule surgeries around the playground builds. You know, they didn't want to miss them. You know, one deputy chief from Linden actually had his shoulder worked on, but he said, I don't want to have it done while we're in the middle of a playground build. The moms and dads, this is the great story, and why we think it's going to continue on is because when we built the playground for their child, they loved the project so much they started to show up at subsequent builds and get involved hands-on. We have some families that have been at 10 to 15 playground sites.
Really?
And physically build along with us, because it's also a healing through healing project. To imagine, I can't imagine. I mean, such a horrible loss.
So where'd the financing come from, Bill?
Very grassroots. We started with, you know, some smaller companies, and you know, we grew to putting some stuff on Facebook, and we had people, kids all over the country started sending us money from lemonade stands and First Holy Communions, some of the most beautiful stories. You know, a 7 or 8 year old child who heard about the playground and says, I want to give my birthday money or my Holy Communion money to where Angels play because I know these children need a playground. And that came from all across the country. Actually, we had from Puerto Rico and from Australia, we had contributions. We also were fortunate to have the NFL and Carnival Cruise Line and Pepperidge Farm and organizations like that. In Elizabeth, the civic organizations, the Rotary in Elizabeth was very, very generous to us and partnered with there. So the beauty of it is, and you would appreciate that being a administrator of a major city, is the taxes. No tax money was used for people would. How we did this was through grassroots and through contributions. And
well, when you mentioned the NFL, there was sitting home one night watching a Jet game, and all of a sudden you show up at halftime.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that, and I get to be on this show, and I get to be on the End Zone, and it's embarrassing at times. It becomes a little bit too much about me. I have to tell the story, but I could tell you that when people thank us for this in those ways, I like to do it because it gets the word out. Your viewers hopefully will see this and help us to continue the project further. But I always say don't thank us because this is the most selfish project we've ever been involved with. I get so much more out of it than we put in. It's the blessing of my life to do it. And so on occasion, I have to be in the end zone. You know, I'm a Jet fan, and one of the jokes was that, you know, that was one of the few times, you know, a Jet was in the end zone all year because they had a difficult year. But it is, you know, those types of things and the publicity that we get. I tell the story. There are hundreds and hundreds of people that are.
So let's put in perspective. What does a playground cost?
Well, they vary depending on whether we're using the rubber surfacing like we did in Elizabeth. So they vary anywhere from $50,000 to about $125,000. Our goal in each location is to raise roughly $100,000. We've had some real good luck in getting raising money in some communities, in others not so much. But what we do is it's a pay it forward. We love the fact that we can come to a location and tell them there's no pressure at all to raise a nickel. We're going to build the playground. However, if you'd like to support us, whatever you were going to contribute there would go to the next playground. So we always pay it forward. And we've been fortunate enough, I think we raised in the neighborhood of $3 million in 19 months. And each time we would come to a location, they would try to, you know, they're so happy to have this gift of the playground and whatever money they would raise. And it was kind of like no pressure. And we think that actually assisted us in taking away the quid pro quo, and they would try to outdo the previous location and raise additional funds. So
how did you pick the names of these? You know, who got to go first, and who picked the names and teachers? How did?
Yeah, I'd like to think.
Throw them in a hat, or how
no. I like to think that I had nothing to do with the choosing of the location. Rather, you know, in many cases, divine intervention. The locations came to us. We'd have people. Seabright, for example, said they were devastated, and the community was very depressed and down in the mouth about what had taken place in their community, and could they be considered for a playground. And then I would go and meet with one of the families. In this case, it was, you know, Michael Murphy, Anne Marie's husband, and he'd say, you know, we have some contacts in New Jersey. You know, is there some place on the shore that we could have it? And lo and behold, you know, we would put that connection. It would always, I thought, to be honest with you, at first that the Connecticut families would not want, they would want it close to home. The opposite became true. They love the fact that they can drive, their community has been obviously inundated with, they can't drive down the street without being reminded of some memorial or a green ribbon. They like the fact that when they want to, that they can go to a playground and drive into New Jersey or New York or someplace remote from their home in Connecticut and go to their playground. One great story was when you lose a child and the birthday and an anniversary or Mother's Day comes up, those days, they're all hard, they're all difficult, but you know, how do you celebrate the birthday? What do you do? And there's all, what is the answer to that? I don't know. But we did get a beautiful text from one of the dads. It happened to be Dylan Hockley's birthday, and he wanted to tell me that on his, they didn't know what to do, so they decided to take a ride to the playground. And he texted me that there were 30 children playing there and smiling and laughing and having a good time, and it lifted their spirits. And he said, in a way, my son is still alive through these children. So that was pretty special. I
You
never
saved these?
Oh yeah. The story, actually, we're putting a book together about all the various stories there, and hoping to to get that, mainly to share the beautiful stories. I mean, when we needed a rainbow to appear, a rainbow appeared. When we needed a certain cloud formation to look like an angel come across. So, we think God and the angels are very much guiding this project. As you know, I'm not this smart to come up with, an idea like this. I think that it's driven from somewhere very special.
So what is a signature bell?
The signature bell, that's a story in of itself. One of my favorite movies is It's a Wonderful Life, and there's a little story about a bell there, and when it rings, it's every time a bell rings, an angel gets its wings. So one of our volunteers said, we think we should include the bell, and have the mom or dad keep one of them as a keepsake, and as part of the ceremony, when we cut the ribbon, they would ring the bell. And then around Christmas time, we sold little bells that we couldn't keep them in. That was part of our fundraising, and people could get a bell in honor of the playgrounds or in honor of the child. And another, we don't think, a coincidence, when we reached out for a bell company to help us make the bells. I remember it was the Bevan Bell Company from Hanford, Connecticut, and I called them and I told them the story about why we needed these bells. And then they informed me that it was their company in 1946 that had built the bell from the movie It's a Wonderful Life. So everything is just completely connected, and we feel like we're led in those directions. Though it doesn't sound like the Bill Lavin that you're used to hearing, but
I'm used to hearing the Bill Lavin debating fire policy
exactly.
and pensions and things across the table from me.
Exactly.
So the Elizabeth Project was the last one in this phase,
the most
or
recent,
the first
yep.
one in the next phase.
Yep.
So tell us about the volunteers on the Elizabeth Project and how that got going at the waterfront here in our city.
Well, as you know, being from Elizabeth and wanting to make a difference there, one of the firehouses that I worked out of is 2 blocks from that area, and we would go down and train there, and we saw the devastation of Elizabeth, but we wanted to pay it forward to the city of Elizabeth through our brothers from the Connecticut State Police, and the firefighters from Connecticut wanted to pay back the firefighters from New Jersey who had reached out to them, and that's how it works. And we thought, what better place to come than to the city of Elizabeth, where, the idea was kind of born, where I grew up, where I'm one of 11, and my mom and dad, are from, and we really had a lot of support. It obviously takes a lot of time and effort, and being an active firefighter at the time, your administration, your Chief McNamara, and the director, Knopf, always worked with me, and really allowed me to do some of the things that I was able to do. So we thought it was only appropriate to come back to Elizabeth and build a state-of-the-art playground. It was, it's Councilwoman Patricia Perkins Augusta, who just loved the project. We had the Rotary. I was honored by the Rotary. They honor a firefighter and a police officer each and every year. That was a couple years ago, and it's kind of weird to be honored for something that you love to do. And it was for the playgrounds, and I mentioned, we might want to come back here, and they loved the idea. So they wrote a sizable check, and, we had support from, I got to give John Papetti a shout out. He was, for a short time, the director of the fire department, but just an incredible public servant, and, he made things happen. I think we got the most support of anybody from the DPW and the guys who worked right alongside us. So our team was thrilled to do it there, and
who did the volunteer work in Elizabeth?
Well, we had the same people. We had Connecticut firefighters and police officers, and our team from around the state, mostly firefighters, mostly retired firefighters, and that will be the beginning of the next project.
So you're not stopping?
No, not at all. I talked earlier about the healing of the healing dynamic that affected the families, and through their work, and to kind of put in their interest and energies into something positive. So we asked, actually it was the families who gave me the idea. They said, you know, could we pay it forward to another place around the country? One of the Josephine Gay, the little girl, autistic child, her playground is in Bridgeport, Connecticut, and her mom and dad and sisters moved to the greater Boston area. They're right outside of there. And as you know, the Boston Marathon bombing took the lives of you know, civilians and a police officer there. So they asked if they could pay it forward to the Boston area. So I'm happy to tell you that it's middle of September, we'll be in Wilmington, Massachusetts in honor of Sean Collier. We met with their family. We will be in Oklahoma in August. In a few weeks, we'll be in Mississippi for the 10-year anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. So the logistics are bigger, and you know, I used to say I had a tiger by the tail, and now I have a circus by the tail. But
so, as we close, how can people get involved, or how can they send funds?
Well, they need to just text the word ANGELS to 71777, or go to the Where Angels Play website. I mean, if you put Where Angels Play Foundation.org, our story, in 30 minutes, it's almost impossible to tell all the beautiful, miraculous stories that have taken place. But if they want to get involved, either physically or to help us financially, it is a wonderful thing to be a part of, and it's my blessing.
Well, thank you for all your time that you spent on the show explaining to the residents of our city. And,
my privilege.
People that will watch it, and more importantly, on behalf of all those kids you're making happy, thank you.
No, my privilege.
For Bill Lavin and Where Angels Play, I'm Chris Bolwage, and we'll see you next week on another edition of Our City.
Sometimes you learn by helping others learn. Kane University.